Hey, it's Plumber Tom. Thank you for watching my videos. I wanted to let you know really quickly about some awesome resources that I have for you as you're trying to learn. I have free practice tests that you can take if you're preparing for a state test. I have preparation courses that you can take that will guide you through that process if you're getting ready for a test. I have other courses that can help you in learning the plumbing trade. So make sure to check out those resources. You can find a link in the comments below. When you participate in those courses, you're helping me to be able to create more content. So I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching. Hello and welcome to this presentation all about the Utah amendments to the International Plumbing Code. My name is Thomas, and in this presentation I will introduce you to the amendments. I'll give you recommendations on how to study them, and we will discuss parts of the amendments themselves so that you understand what laws are required right here in Utah. So let's start with this question. What are the amendments? Plumbing code in Utah is largely the International Plumbing Code. So, who has the authority? Is it the International Code Council or is it Utah? Well, the International Code Council is really only a group who put together code and then sell it to jurisdictions like Utah. They really don't have any authority. They can't enforce the code on anyone. They just come up with it. Then Utah looks at that and says, you know, this is good plumbing code. We'll adopt this. And then that becomes law. So Utah and the local jurisdictions in Utah are the ones who enforce that. Now, when they adopt that code, there are perhaps some things that Utah legislators would disagree with. And so, because they are the lawmakers, they have the right to change those laws, to actually change the code. So that's what they do. And those changes are called amendments. So what we're looking at here is an override. You have the code from the International Code Council, the International Plumbing Code. When Utah puts amendments over the top of that, those amendments are the law. And whatever other requirements were there before can be disregarded. And whatever changes to that code are made within the state by law, that's what we go by. And so for that reason, it's very important for you as a plumber to understand the amendments, because you can read the code, you can know the code, but there are some things in the code that are actually not law in Utah, or some laws that have been added to the code because you're in Utah. And those are the things that you need to know. Those are also things that you'll be tested on when you take your journeyman test at the state level. All right, so how do you go about getting a copy of the amendments? It's not printed in the International Code Council's code books. Well, you can look it up pretty quickly online. Just search Utah Amendments to the International Plumbing Code, and it will pop right up. Now, they amend those and update those every so often. The most recent one that I've been able to find is from 2023, and this is being filmed in 2025. It seems to me like previous to that, it was maybe 2016, and before that, 2013. So they don't amend this or adopt this every year. Every so often, Utah legislators look it over and update the amendments. But this version is the 2023 that we're going to go over. You can look that up online and download. The thing is, though, you want a printed copy, an actual physical copy, just like you have a copy of your code book. And when you go to take a state test, you want to have an actual copy of that book so that you can look in it. We're going to treat this just like a code book. It may just be a few pages that we print out for the amendments, but we're going to look at it like code, we're going to mark it like code, we're going to study it like code, and you'll need your own copy. Now let's talk for just a minute about how to study the amendments. I feel like the best way for you to connect those amendments to the International Plumbing Code is to just go through at the same time and mark within your code where those changes are. So, for example, if there's a change to a certain paragraph, what I like to do is right there in my book, I will put a small U and A and circle it. That's Utah Amendments. And that tells me, hey, I should go look in the amendments because there's something different on this section. If the change is small, I might even just write in there a couple words or an explanation. But I don't want to get too wordy or write too much into my book. So as long as there's some indicator that, at this section, I need to look at the Utah amendments, then that's going to be really helpful to me if I'm going through the code and I'm trying to make sure that I'm up to date on the Utah law. That said, as we look at the Utah amendments right here in this course, what I recommend you do is get your codebook open and your amendments out, and every time we talk about a section, mark it right in there as we go, all along the way. I'm going to bring out the most important stuff. We're going to cover 99% of it, and then you will have it right in your book, and you'll know what it's all about. So do this together with me. Get out your book. Get out your amendments. Make sure that you're following along and marking with a highlighter or a colored pencil, and then you'll know exactly what you need to know about the Utah amendments. All right, the first section of changes here in the Utah amendments have to do with definitions. They just want to make sure either that we have definitions that we didn't already have, or that they clarify and modify things so that it means what they want here in Utah. One of these is 202, Certified Backflow Preventer Assembly Tester. This gives a definition of the person who will go and test backflow preventers. It says a person who has shown competence to test backflow prevention assemblies to the satisfaction of the authority having jurisdiction under Utah Code, subsection 19-4-104. So this ties that requirement to an actual law and specifies what is required for someone who's going to go out and test. Now, one thing you'll notice throughout these amendments is that there's a lot of emphasis on backflow prevention and defining that and how backflow preventers are used. That's actually like a big portion of what these amendments are all about. So no surprise here, they're going to be talking more and more about backflow preventers, backflow preventer testers, and stuff like that. The definition for cross connection has been deleted and replaced. The definition that they want in here is any physical connection or potential connection or arrangement between two otherwise separate piping systems, one of which contains potable water and the other either water unknown or questionable safety or steam, gas, chemical, whereby there exists the possibility for flow from one system to the other with the direction of flow depending on the pressure differential between the two systems. Okay, what is that really saying? We have potable water. We want to protect it. There are a lot of things that we might connect pipes to that would contaminate our potable water, and we don't want that. So any connection of any kind, I mean, that could be to drains, it could be to steam, gas, chemical, mechanical, whatever it is, we have to protect it. 202 gives us a new definition, which is called deep seal trap. And we have our basic definition of what is a P-trap, or a trap for a drain, but the deep seal is a manufactured or field fabricated trap with a liquid seal of 4-inch or larger. And this is allowed by Utah Code. You can have a deeper trap. And how would you create that? Well, you just get 90s, right? You have the U shape of the trap, but if you use a regular 90 and not the street 90, you can cut that piece to whatever depth you want. You can create a 4-inch trap seal, a deeper seal. What is the advantage to that? Well, it's not going to dry out as fast. It's going to last longer. So we have this new definition, deep seal trap. All right, here's another definition. It's the essentially non-toxic transfer fluid. They want us to understand that there are fluids that are not toxic, fluids including propylene glycol and mineral oil. But there's also fluids that are toxic. So essentially toxic transfer fluids. This would be soil, waste, or gray water. So that's drain waste. And any fluid that is not an essential non-toxic transfer fluid under this code. Just defining some fluids for us. There's a definition added, motor vehicle waste disposal well. This is a well having a waste from a motor vehicle facility subject to rulemaking section 19-5-104 regarding underground injection. So they want to give us some clarification in this about motor vehicle waste disposal wells. They have altered the definition for potable water. There's already a definition in the code for that. But this is the change they make. It says this is water free from impurities present in amount sufficient to cause disease or harmful physiological effects, and conforming to the Utah Code, Title 19, it gives some chapters, the Water Quality Act, and regulations for the public health authority having jurisdiction. What this is doing is tying the definition of what potable water is to the laws that actually spell it out. Here's an important definition that's been added. This is dual source connection. A pipe that is installed so that irrigation or potable water is connected to the pressurized irrigation system at one time, but not both at the same time. This also applies to well water. What this is doing is protecting the potable water, and it says it has to be protected by a backflow preventer. What I have here is an illustration of water lines in a sprinkler box. Those water lines, you see the two valves here, are bringing water to the irrigation system. One of those comes from a secondary source, meaning like this is dirty irrigation water provided by the city. The other is potable water from the house. Notice that you cannot have them both connected at the same time. There are unions with a U-shaped connection that can be connected to the one or other, and you would only have one connected at any given time. The point here is to try and keep irrigation water away from our potable water. But in addition to that, this definition says you also have to have a backflow preventer along with that separation of connection. So this is actually coming right from my house. I have a backflow preventer in the basement. It feeds that sprinkler box. And then that protects me just in case for some reason maybe the pipes break and, irrigation water's getting into the potable side. I still have a protection of the backflow preventer, but there's also an actual physical disconnect so that I cannot have those piped together at the same time. This is how they should all be set up when you have both secondary and your potable water as options for your sprinklers. All right, go with me in your codebook to chapter 3. We're now in section 303.4, and they've added an exception. So they're just extending this section a little bit. And when it comes to a third-party certification for backflow preventers, they're saying that it needs to have 2 certifications. One is from a laboratory and the other is from the field. And so there's different certifications that these manufacturers can get. In order for these to be used here in Utah, you have to have both. So that kind of limits down the backflow preventers that we can use, but we're making sure that we have really good ones that will work. Section 311, the Great Lament. Toilet facilities for workers. The Utah Amendments has removed this. There's no explanation for this. It's just cruel and unusual punishment. They say contractors don't have to provide portable outhouses according to this section. Now we all know that any contractor who cares anything about the sanitary nature of his project is going to provide these. So, but if they don't, well, we all just know they're lousy contractors. That's all there is to it. All right, join me in section 312.3 in the International Plumbing Code. The very first line says, when it comes to drainage testing with air, that plastic piping shall not be tested using air. What? We do that all the time in Utah. What are you talking about? Well, the reason you're allowed to do that is because of the amendments. Utah's saying, well, what else are we going to do if it's winter, right? So here's exactly what it has to say. Where water is not available at the construction site, or where freezing conditions limit the use of water on construction site, plastic drainage and vent piping may be permitted to be tested with air. So there you go. Now you can. The following procedures shall be followed. These are the things you need to know if you're going to test using air. First of all, the contractor shall recognize that the plastic is extremely brittle at low temperatures and can explode, causing serious injury or death. Please know you're in danger. Number 2, contractor assumes all liability for injury or death to persons or damage to property, or for claims for labor and or material arising from any alleged failure of the system during testing with air or compressed gases. What they're saying is, if you use air and it blows up and hurts someone or damages something, it's your fault, not the state's. Number 3, proper personal protective equipment, including safety eyewear and protective headgear, should be worn by all individuals in any area where an air or gas test is being conducted. So don't forget your PPE. Put it on. Glasses, face shield, body armor, put it all on because this could explode. Number 4, contractors shall take all precautions necessary to limit the pressure within the plastic piping. We don't just hook up the compressor and leave and then be like, oops, it got all the way up to 55 on the drains. Number 5, no drain and vent system shall be pressurized in excess of 6 psi as measured by accurate gauges graduated to no more than 3 times the test pressure. So you should have a gauge that goes from 0 to 15, that's 3 times test pressure, and you shouldn't let any more than 6 psi get into that system. That's your responsibility to limit it to 6 psi. Now again, this is on drains, right? Number 6, pressure gauge shall be monitored during the test period, which should not exceed 15 minutes. This is a little bit difficult. You heard that, right? Code says you have to have the test on for at least 15 minutes. Amendments say you should only have it on for 15 minutes. This is a little problematic when I call in for an inspection and I'm told by the code official, we'll be there sometime today. I don't know when, but sometime today. Well, what am I going to do? I've got to have the test on when they show up, but I don't know when they're going to show up. So basically, we just have to fill it and leave it filled for more than 15 minutes. I don't know how we could possibly meet this requirement unless they can tell us an exact time the inspectors are going to show up, which they just won't do.
You're late.
Huh? An inspector is never late, little plumber. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
Okay, number 7. At the conclusion of the test, the system shall be depressurized gradually. All trapped air or gases should be vented, and test balls and plugs should be removed with caution. What they're saying is, as fun as it is to go and just loosen that gym cap and let it fly 30 feet in the air, that's not safe and you probably shouldn't do it. In 312.5, we're looking at water supply system tests, so we're talking water lines. Similarly, they're saying you can use air. It says where water is not available on construction site or where freezing conditions limit the use of water on construction site, plastic water pipes may be permitted to be tested with air. The following procedures shall be followed. Guess what? It's the same list as what we saw on drainage for the most part. They want to make sure that you understand the dangers, that you're fully responsible for anything that goes wrong. But let's look at the difference here with water lines. It says on number 5 that water supply systems shall be pressure tested with a minimum of 50 psi and not more than 80 psi as measured by accurate gauges graduated to no more than 3 times the test pressure. So, minimum of 50, we see that in the code, but they limit that pressure to 80. 80 psi should be the most that you ever put on a pressure test for water lines. Now, I don't know, maybe the company you work for likes to test at 100 psi. The piping should be rated for that, but code amendments say 80 is the most that you should do. Once again, they have that 15 minutes only requirement. Do what you can, fill it up, but I think we're going to have a hard time meeting that one. And similarly, you don't want to just like let this thing go. You gradually decompress what's in that system for the test, right? In 312.10.2, this section was deleted and replaced. It gives us specifics about backflow protectors and how they are to be tested. That means any backflow prevention assembly that can be tested, it has to be tested within 10 days of installation. If you can't get it on the day of installation, it should also be tested immediately after it's repaired, and it should be tested at least annually. That's what they require for backflow preventer assemblies. They also refer us over to the cross control manual. 312.10.3 also states testing shall be performed by certified backflow preventer tester in accordance with Utah Administrative Code R309-305. So this is referring us back to the law that actually spells out who can test backflow preventers. All right, there's a lot more that we need to talk about in the Utah amendments. In this presentation, I've introduced you to the amendments, and we've covered from Chapter 1 through Chapter 3 in the International Plumbing Code the changes that have been made by the Utah amendments. Join me in the next presentation. We'll pick it up in Chapter 4, and we'll continue to learn what Utah has for us in the amendments for plumbing law.